Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and I love Fender Japan. I really do. So this is going to be quite the treat for me to film this video today, where I'm comparing a 2022 Fender Takashi Kato Signature Stratocaster with 1982 real deal Fender JV Stratocaster ST57. We're going to start off with some sound samples, but we're also going to go over some of the nitty-gritty, a little bit of the history of the JV series and Japanese guitars from Fender in general, as well as talking about how they actually feel, because the microphone's only going to tell you so much. There's a few little things that go into these instruments that really make them so sought after, and we're going to be seeing how well the Takashi Kato compares in that aspect as well. But sound demos first. Any drive you're going to be hearing is going to be from the Benson preamp pedal. Any kind of extra reverb, it might be from the Strymon Volante. Other than that, amp, SM57, straight into the Apollo interface, into your ears. Let's get started. Before I talk about the sound samples here and immediately what I noticed in the room that you may have noticed when you were listening back to that, I'm going to talk about the guitars in general as a whole here. The JV Strats are something else for a few reasons. First of all, this JV is an ST5765. Originally, all of them came with this little sticker on the back of it. This says 65 on it. That would denote the amount of yen that it sold for new, 65,000 yen at that time in 1982. Poly finish on a maple with a maple neck as well. Had red bobbin pickups in it and American hardware from Fullerton. This guitar is outstanding, not because of just those specifications, just this neck is unreal. This has always blown me away how well Fender Japan did when they made this particular guitar neck. I mean, I go through a lot of guitars. This one has never, ever been listed for sale, nor will it ever be listed for sale. It's just an absolute joy to play this guitar. It feels like it plays itself. And it was a really good introduction to me about Japanese-made instruments. Sometimes if you're looking into getting a guitar from a foreign country, it might be a little bit more easy, a peace of mind kind of thing if you go with a brand that you've heard of. And because Fender is, you know, one of the two biggest brands in the history of electric guitars, it kind of takes the edge off of the, oh, I hope I don't get a dog, and then maybe I can't resell the guitar, yada, yada, yada. When I bought this, it was just luck of the draw. I found it in a shop, hanging on a rack. Fell in love immediately, and looking back at what I paid for it back before the year 2000, I think I did pretty well for myself. Then on the other side of the token here, we have modern Fender Japan. This is a Takashi Kato Strat. I believe this retails new in Japan now for 179,000 yen. Somewhere around that area. Don't direct quote me, I know the prices can fluctuate a little bit. But what do you get with this guitar? You also get a vintage radius similar to the ST57 JV. You get the American original hardware, or rather the pure vintage hardware, which is a really nice touch. You have pickups that are just vintage voice, but they are cloth wired, which is a really nice touch on it. You get full nitro finish on the body, albeit it's a very thin nitro finish with no poly base coat, and a nitro satin finish on the neck. So a few more modern kind of tweaks to a very classic design. This guitar is based on a 1965 model that Takashi Kato himself played. I mean, that kind of makes sense at the end of the day here. Playability between these two, the neck shape is definitely different. This is more of kind of a C/D, a little bit smaller in the hands. This is a 60s oval that really beefs up. I believe it gets to 0.97 around there at the 12th fret. So if you really are looking at this guitar, because this is a guitar that you can still buy without getting totally price gouged, because they're still producing them new compared to one of the vintage JV guitars, might be pertinent information to you. But that being said, I mean, I could sit here and I could draw this video out. I could talk all day, but I'm not going to. I personally was surprised when it came down to the actual sitting and listen playing these guitars back to back. There's so much more low end in this guitar, to the fact that I didn't like it in comparison on the neck pickup whatsoever compared to the Takashi Kato. I think it's just one of those things, man. Maybe it's the pickups that are currently in the JV. This does not have its original pickups in it. This has pure vintage 59 pickups in it from Fender. Really, really boomy. And I thought maybe it was the pickup height. No, they're actually the same exact height. I took out the ruler and I measured to confirm. So just one of those things, I suppose. But outside of that, I thought the bridge pickup a little bit better on the JV Strat, which would make a little bit more sense, a little bit more beef to it by comparison. But overall build quality, Fender Japan, when you get to the highest tier of Fender Japan, this is right up there with one of the most expensive models that they're going to sell from a production standpoint. It's not much to be said. Absolutely incredible. They still do a really good job. You can tell that they take a lot of pride in their work. Obviously, comparing things from a brand new production guitar versus an old kind of vintage piece, and in the case of Fender Japan, this really is a vintage piece. It's one of the first ones they ever made. You can't really judge the fret edges, the fretwork, all that stuff, but as a whole, the build quality is just, it's great. These guitars are really amazing value, especially in this particular day and age where it feels like everything just keeps getting more and more and more and more expensive when you're not skimping on certain parts. And if you have to have a name brand, you're really paying for it right now at this point. But this guitar really delivers if you're somebody who's into, you know, kind of a vintage spec with a really cool finish that will actually relic naturally kind of quickly over time, if I'm being honest with you, because it doesn't have the poly undercoat that many of the Fender American reissues have to have on them. I'm looking at you, American vintage twos. But for some people who don't care about that, I mean, could be water under the bridge at that point. Now, before I wrap this video up, I'm going to leave you with some food for thought of my main observations here. When I initially wanted to film this video, it was for no other reason than the fact that when I first got this guitar, this did not have frets at all on it. This guitar just came back to me with a new set of vintage size frets on it, so I thought, yeah, this will be a lot of fun. However, it led me to think about something else. People that seek out vintage guitars, people that seek out much more expensive guitars, American guitars, Japanese guitars, doesn't really matter what it is at that point. Sometimes we get these things built up in our head that older might always mean significantly better. This is a great guitar, and for my money, it's the best Strat that I've ever owned. I really do mean that. But the gap between this guitar and this guitar, I don't think it's that big. I really do not think it's a gigantic difference. And when you consider prices into the things, another $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, depending on what models that you're looking at. Let's just forget about JVs or anything else. When you're talking about these older guitars, sometimes you really are just paying for that kind of mystique or that hope or that aura or the stories that the guitar had or it traveled on, and that stuff is all cool. But production of these guitars these days, especially from Japan, I want to stress this more than I really should here, because I've not had the best luck with a lot of big name brands when it comes to the American production, but they take so much pride in the work. The detail is still there. There's not much in it, you guys. If you're somebody who really wants a JV ST57, which would have a rosewood board at it as opposed to the maple that's on this ST57, I'd recommend trying to find one of these guys. I know it's going to be hard in America, and I know that for some people it can be intimidating purchasing a guitar sight unseen from Japan. But man, they'll treat you right. Customer service out there from multiple shops that I've dealt with, all of them have been outstanding. Majority will speak English back to you in a very competent manner. I was actually very surprised. Some of them speak English better than people that leave comments on my videos. No offense. But in all seriousness, my final conclusion here is the Takashi Kato Strat does carry on the torch from these original Hallmark JV guitars very well, even if they were not intended or designed to be direct competition or replacements for them. If you enjoyed this video or found this useful, helpful, entertaining, any of the above, you can leave a like. I really would appreciate that. You could also subscribe to the channel. Both of those things are free. They really are, I promise. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one. Leave me a comment. Let me know which one you thought sounded better, or if you could only have one of them, which one would you rather have and why? But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take it easy, everybody.